Have you ever had that feeling, a sense that you're just a little bit off? It's not a loud, 5-alarm fire. It's not a crisis that brings your world to a screeching halt. No, it's something quieter, more persistent. It's a low-grade hum of static in the background of your life, a subtle, inner voice that seems to be trying to get your attention. You're moving through your day, handling your responsibilities, meeting your deadlines, maybe even raising a family. You've built a life that, from the outside, looks solid. You are competent, you are strong. But inside, that quiet hum of negative thought is always there. It's the voice that whispers, "Are you sure you did that right?" after a presentation. It's the subtle wave of anxiety when a friend takes too long to text back. It's the vague feeling of dissatisfaction that you just can't seem to shake, even when things are going well. It's exhausting. And if you're watching this, it's not because you're looking for a 5-minute fix or a hollow, positive thinking platitude. It's because you're smart enough to know that there's a deeper system at play, a kind of internal architecture that's causing these cracks in your foundation, and you're ready to understand it. What if I told you there was a blueprint for that architecture? A design for the mind that has been tested for over 2,000 years. The ancient Stoics, thinkers like Marcus Aurelius, Seneca, they were the master architects of the inner world. They understood that our peace isn't stolen by events, but by our response to them. And what they knew intuitively, modern neuroscience is now beginning to prove with startling clarity. Your brain isn't permanently hardwired to be negative, it's often just running old, outdated software. The goal isn't to fight your mind. The goal is to become its chief architect. Today, we are not just going to give you a few scattered tips. We will walk you through a clear, 7-step framework, backed by both ancient wisdom and modern science, to help you understand, redesign, and ultimately take ownership of your inner world. This is a journey of construction. So let's begin. 1. The foundation. You are the watcher, not the storm. Alright, let's lay the first stone of our new foundation. This is arguably the most important, most transformative principle in the entire framework. If you can truly grasp this one idea, your entire relationship with your own mind will begin to shift. The principle is this: you are not your thoughts. You are the one who is aware of them. I want you to really let that sink in for a moment. We live our lives fused with our thoughts. We believe that the voice in our head is the absolute truth of who we are. A worried thought appears, and we say, "I am a worrier." A critical thought about our appearance arises, and we conclude, "I am unattractive." A thought about a past failure replays, and we decide, "I am a failure." We give these fleeting, electrical impulses in our brain the power to define our entire identity. But the Stoics, and now modern psychology, offer a radical alternative. They invite us to take a step back and simply watch. Imagine it's 3 in the morning. The house is silent, the world is asleep, but your mind is a raging tempest. A thought about a deadline at work pops up. Then it morphs into a worry about your performance. That worry connects to a memory of a mistake you made last month. Suddenly, your mind is telling you a story: you're not competent, you're going to get fired, you'll disappoint your family, you won't be able to pay your mortgage. The feeling in your chest tightens. Your breathing becomes shallow. This is the thought storm. It feels completely real, completely overwhelming, as if you are the storm. But what if you weren't? What if you were the silent, unmoving space in which the storm is happening? Think of yourself as the sky. Your thoughts, emotions, and sensations are the weather: clouds, rain, wind, and lightning. The weather is constantly changing. Some days are sunny and calm, others are dark and turbulent. But the sky itself doesn't change. The sky is not the storm. The sky is the container for the storm. It witnesses the clouds pass without being damaged by them. This is your true nature. You are the sky, the silent, aware presence that witnesses the weather of your mind. This isn't just a beautiful metaphor, it's a description of a neurological reality. When that 3 a.m. thought storm kicks in, it's not just in your imagination. It's a biological event. Your amygdala, the brain's ancient and hypervigilant alarm system, has been triggered. It can't tell the difference between a real-life predator and a negative thought about a work email. To the amygdala, a threat is a threat. So it does its job. It floods your system with stress hormones like cortisol. This is your body's survival mechanism, designed to prepare you to fight or flee. But when the threat is your own thinking, there's nothing to run from. You're left marinating in a chemical bath of your own anxiety. This is why negative thinking feels so physically draining, because it is. Here is where the power of being the watcher comes in. The moment you shift from being the thought to observing the thought, you change the entire neurological cascade. When you can say to yourself, I am noticing the thought that I might fail, instead of, I am a failure, you create a tiny gap of space. In that space, you are no longer the victim of the thought, you are the witness. This simple act of mindful observation sends a signal back to your amygdala that says, false alarm. We are not actually in danger. It allows the prefrontal cortex, the more rational, modern part of your brain, to come back online. You are, in essence, using your awareness to regulate your own brain chemistry. So, let's try a very simple, practical exercise right now. You don't have to close your eyes. Just for the next 60 seconds, I want you to become an observer of your own mind. Like a scientist watching a fascinating specimen. Just notice what thoughts arise. Don't judge them, don't try to change them, and don't get carried away by them. When a thought appears, simply put a gentle label on it. Is it a thought about the future? Label it planning or worrying. Is it a thought about the past? Label it remembering. Is it a thought judging your experience right now? Label it judging. Go ahead. Just watch. What did you notice? You might have noticed how busy the mind is. But more importantly, who was it that was doing the noticing? Who was applying the labels? That is the watcher. That is the real you. That calm, aware presence has been there your entire life, just beneath the noise. The goal isn't to create a perfectly empty mind. The goal is to build a relationship with this inner watcher. Because when you are anchored in that awareness, the storms of thought can still come and go, but they no longer have the power to define you. You are the sky, and the weather is just passing through. This is the bedrock of your new inner architecture. 2. The reality principle: stop arguing with what is. So, you have established yourself as the watcher, the calm sky that holds the weather of the mind. This is the first, crucial step. But what happens when the weather isn't just a fleeting, anxious thought in the middle of the night? What happens when the storm is real? A job loss. A betrayal from someone you trusted. A diagnosis you never saw coming. An opportunity you missed that will never come back. Our first instinct in these moments is not just to feel the pain, but to fight the event itself. Our minds begin a desperate, unwinnable argument with reality. We say to ourselves, this shouldn't have happened. We replay the scenario over and over, trying to mentally edit the past. If only I had seen the signs. They had no right to do that. This is not how my life was supposed to go. This internal monologue feels productive, like we're processing. But in truth, we are chaining ourselves to the very thing that hurts us. The original event caused the wound, but it is our relentless argument with reality that keeps the wound from healing, pouring salt into it day after day. This is one of the deepest sources of human suffering. The Stoics had a powerful, almost shockingly direct, solution for this. They called it amor fati, a love of fate. Now, this is often misunderstood. It does not mean you should be happy that something terrible happened. It does not mean you pretend the pain isn't real. It means choosing to accept what is, without reservation, because it has already happened. The past is no longer within your control. The only thing in your control, right now, is your response. As Epictetus so brilliantly put it, do not seek to have events happen as you want them to, but instead want them to happen as they do happen, and your life will go well. Let's think about this through a modern lens. Imagine a man, let's call him Michael, a dedicated architect in his 40s. He spends a year of his life pouring everything he has into a career-defining project. He works late nights, misses family dinners, all for this one goal. And then, due to a corporate merger completely outside his control, the project is cancelled. Just like that. Gone. Michael's mind immediately starts the argument, a year of my life, wasted. This is unfair. They shouldn't have cancelled it. I should have seen this coming. He is caught in a loop of resistance, and with every loop, he feels more bitter, more powerless. The event is over, but Michael's suffering is just beginning. This argument with reality is, again, a neurological process. When Michael's mind is stuck in the "it shouldn't have happened" loop, his amygdala, his brain's threat detector, stays on high alert. His body remains in a chronic state of stress because his brain is trying to fight a battle that has already been lost. Peace is impossible in this state. Now, what if Michael chose to practice the reality principle? He would allow himself to feel the sting of disappointment, yes. But then, he would consciously shift his internal monologue. He would say, okay. This happened. The project is gone. That is a fact. Arguing with it is a waste of my limited energy. So, now what? That one question, so, now what? Is the key that unlocks everything. It signals to the brain that we are moving from resistance to adaptation. This is a process that neuroscientists call cognitive reappraisal, or reframing. And the science is fascinating. When you consciously decide to accept the reality of a situation and focus on what you can do next, brain scans show a shift in activity. Power transfers from the emotional, reactive amygdala to the thoughtful, deliberate prefrontal cortex. This is your brain's CEO taking back control. You are literally, on a biological level, calming the storm and engaging the part of your brain responsible for problem solving, learning, and growth. Michael, by asking, so, now what, might realize that the year wasn't wasted. He developed new skills, he proved his work ethic, he learned about corporate vulnerabilities. Maybe this is the catalyst he needed to start his own firm, something he'd always dreamed of but was too comfortable to pursue. The event itself did not change, but by accepting it, he reclaimed his power over its meaning. The obstacle became the way. So, the next time you find your mind arguing with the past, I want you to gently interrupt it. Acknowledge the pain, but then introduce that powerful question, this happened. I can't change it. So, now what? You stop being the victim of your history and start being the architect of your future. Peace doesn't come from a life where nothing goes wrong. That life doesn't exist. True, resilient peace comes from developing the strength to accept what is, and still choose to build from there. 3. The emotional compass. Your first feeling is data, not a directive. We've laid our foundation, we are the watcher, not the storm. And we've built upon it by learning to accept reality, to stop arguing with what is. This brings us to a critical junction point in our inner world. Because once you accept a difficult reality, a challenging project at work, a conflict in a relationship, a financial setback, that acceptance doesn't magically erase your feelings about it. In fact, sometimes it makes them clearer. The feelings will still come. Anger, frustration, fear, sadness. The question is, what is their proper role? What do we do when that first, hot wave of emotion washes over us? Most of us make a critical mistake. We treat our first feeling as a command. We treat it as the absolute, undeniable truth of the situation and give it immediate authority over our actions. Think of your emotions as an internal compass. A compass needle that suddenly spins wildly is giving you information. It's telling you that a powerful force is present. But you wouldn't immediately abandon your map and start running in the direction the needle is pointing. You would pause, assess the situation, and try to understand why the needle is spinning. Your first emotion is that spinning needle. It is raw data, not a final directive. Let's make this tangible. Imagine you send an important email to your boss, one you spent a great deal of time on. An hour later, you receive a one-word reply, "Fine." That's it. What's the first feeling that flashes through you? For many of us, it's a jolt of anxiety or a hot spark of anger. The mind instantly generates a story, "Fine. That's it. They hated it. I failed. They don't respect the work I put in." The first feeling, that anxiety, is now giving a command, worry. Ruminate. Replay every detail of the email to find your mistake. Or if the feeling was anger, the command might be resentful. Complain to your coworkers. Carry this injustice with you all day. Acting on this first directive is how we poison our own peace. But an architect of the mind sees that one-word email and feels that same initial jolt. But instead of obeying it, they pause. They look at the feeling as data. The data says, this response was unexpected and has triggered an insecurity. That's it. That's all the data is. It's a neutral observation. By pausing, you create a space, a buffer zone between the emotional stimulus and your response. And in that space lies your freedom and your power. This sacred pause, as it's sometimes called, is more than just a psychological trick, it is a profound act of neurological self-regulation. That initial flash of emotion is the handiwork of your amygdala, the brain's rapid response security guard. It's designed for speed, not accuracy. It fires off a warning signal before all the facts are in. But when you intentionally pause, you do something remarkable. You give the more thoughtful, analytical part of your brain, your prefrontal cortex, a chance to catch up. Dr. Jill Bolte Taylor, a Harvard-trained neuroanatomist, notes that it takes just 90 seconds for the chemical cascade of an emotion to flush completely out of our system. If you can simply wait for that minute and a half, the raw, reactive power of the emotion subsides, and your ability to think clearly returns. In that 90-second buffer zone, the wise architect begins to analyze the data, not just react to it. They ask better questions. Okay, the feeling is insecurity. But what are the facts? Is my boss known for being brief? Are they perhaps in back-to-back meetings today? Is it possible that fine literally just means everything is fine and no changes are needed? Suddenly, a dozen alternative, and far more likely, realities appear. By not obeying the first directive, you have protected your mind from a storm of self-created negativity. You have chosen to consult the CEO of your brain, not just the panicked intern in the mailroom. This is a skill you can cultivate. Make a promise to yourself. The next time you feel a strong, negative emotion begin to surge, whether from a comment someone makes, a news headline, or a difficult memory, your only job is to pause. Don't act. Don't speak. Don't type. Just breathe and watch the feeling. Notice where you feel it in your body. Give it a name. This is anger. This is fear. This is disappointment. Let the 90-second wave crest and pass. You are not suppressing the emotion, you are simply refusing to grant it immediate control. You are not weak for having strong feelings. You are human. But you are wise when you learn to treat those feelings as valued advisors, not as absolute monarchs. You listen to their input, and then, from a place of calm clarity, you make the final decision. For the inner storyteller, your pain is not in the fact, but in the narrative. So, we've learned to become the watcher. We've practiced accepting reality. And we've developed the crucial skill of pausing before we react to our emotions. This leads us to the very heart of the engine that drives so much of our negative thinking, the storyteller in our mind. Most of the emotional pain we experience in our daily lives doesn't come from the raw facts of a situation. It comes from the story, the interpretation, the narrative that our mind immediately weaves around those facts. And I want to pause here for a moment, because I can hear what some of you might be thinking. It's the same thought that came up in the comments from our community. This sounds simple in theory, but how is it even possible when the feeling is so strong and the story feels so real? This is a brilliant and honest question. It acknowledges that the stories our minds tell are incredibly convincing. They are written in our own voice, use our deepest insecurities as source material, and they play on a loop, gathering evidence and intensity with each repetition. It feels less like a story and more like a documentary of our failures. But it is not. It is a first draft, written by a panicked and often unreliable narrator. The Stoic Emperor Marcus Aurelius, perhaps the most powerful man in the world at the time, had to remind himself of this constantly. He wrote in his private journal, "If you are pained by any external thing, it is not this thing that disturbs you, but your estimate of it. And this you have the power to revoke at any moment." He was reminding himself that the event and the story about the event are two separate things. And our freedom lies in our ability to separate them. Let's create a very clear, real-world example. Imagine you have a performance review at work. The factual event is this: your manager pointed out 2 areas where you met expectations, and 1 area where your performance needs to improve. That's the fact. It's neutral. It's just data. But what story does the inner storyteller immediately begin to write? It might sound something like this: she sees me as a failure. That needs improvement part is all that really matters. The other 2 points were just her being nice. I bet I'm on the list for the next round of layoffs. I'm not cut out for this job. I always mess things up. Notice the dramatic leap. The story takes a single, neutral piece of data and builds an entire narrative of impending doom and personal inadequacy around it. It is this story, not the fact of the feedback, that causes the anxiety, the sleepless nights, and the feeling of dread on Monday morning. The key, then, is to become a conscious editor of these stories. And here is a simple, 3-step process you can use, a tool to bring clarity when your mind is clouded by a painful narrative. Step 1, write down the raw fact. Be brutally objective, like a journalist reporting on an event. Strip away all emotion, all interpretation, all judgment. In our example, the fact is, my manager said my performance in area X needs improvement. That's it. No drama. No fortune-telling. Step 2, write down the story. Get it all out. Write down the entire dramatic monologue your mind is performing. I'm a failure. I'm going to be fired. Everyone knows I'm incompetent. I'm letting my family down. Don't censor it. Just expose the narrative for what it is. Step 3, challenge the story. Now, you step into the role of a kind but firm detective. You look at the story you wrote down and you cross-examine it. Ask it powerful questions. Where is the evidence that I am going to be fired? Is it 100% true that the positive feedback was meaningless? Is there another, more reasonable way to interpret this situation? For example, is it possible that my manager sees potential in me and is giving me this feedback because she wants me to grow and succeed in the company? What would I tell a friend in this exact situation? By going through this simple, deliberate process, you are doing something profound. You are interrupting the unconscious, automatic storytelling machine. You are switching from being the passive consumer of your mind's dramatic fictions to being the active editor of your own perspective. Often, just by shining the light of awareness on the story, you will see how flimsy and unsubstantiated it really is. It felt heavy because it was operating in the dark. Your brain is a storyteller. That is its job. It has been doing it since you were a child to help you make sense of the world. But now, as an adult, you are the editor-in-chief. And a wise editor does not let false, damaging stories go to print. The next time you feel that familiar ache of a negative spiral, pause, grab a piece of paper, and separate the fact from the fiction. Because your pain is rarely in the fact. It is in the narrative. And you alone, have the power to rewrite it. 5. The mental garden. Your environment seeds your thoughts. Up to this point, our work has been entirely internal. We've learned to observe our thoughts, accept reality, regulate our emotions, and edit our own narratives. We've been working as architects on the inside of our own minds. But no building exists in a vacuum. It is surrounded by an environment. And if that environment is toxic, chaotic, or neglected, it will inevitably seep through the walls, no matter how strongly we build them. This brings us to a truth that is often overlooked in the quest for inner peace: your external environment is constantly seeding your internal thoughts. Think of your mind as a garden. Your awareness is the gardener. For this garden to flourish, you need to not only tend to the plants within it but also be incredibly mindful of the seeds that are allowed to blow in from the outside world. If you are constantly allowing seeds of chaos, negativity, and comparison to land in your garden, you will spend all your energy just pulling up weeds, with no time left to cultivate the things you actually want to grow. So, let's look at the three primary sources of these seeds: your physical, your social, and your digital environments. First, your physical environment. Take an honest look at the space where you live and work. Is it a sanctuary that calms your nervous system, or is it a source of low-grade, chronic stress? That pile of mail on the counter, the clothes draped over a chair, the cluttered desk you can barely see, these things are not just inert objects. They are tiny, visual reminders of postponed decisions and unfinished tasks. Each piece of clutter is a microstressor, a quiet signal to your brain that your work is never done, that you are behind, that you are not in control. And this isn't just a feeling, it's backed by science. A study published by the Society for Personality and Social Psychology found that women who described their homes as cluttered or full of unfinished projects had significantly higher levels of the stress hormone cortisol throughout the day compared to those who described their homes as restful and restorative. The chaos on the outside was creating measurable, biological stress on the inside. You cannot cultivate a mind of clarity and peace in an environment of chaos. Your mind mirrors what your eyes see every day. Second, your social environment. The people you spend the most time with are the primary gardeners, or weed planters, in your life. Spending an hour with someone who is hopeful, supportive, and focused on growth can leave you feeling energized and expansive. Conversely, spending that same hour with someone who constantly complains, gossips, or belittles others can leave you feeling drained, cynical, and heavy. We absorb the mindsets of those around us. Their language becomes our inner monologue. Their anxieties become our own. If your social circle is a constant source of drama and pessimism, you are trying to grow a beautiful garden in polluted soil. Finally, and perhaps most insidiously in the modern world, is your digital environment. Your social media feed is not a neutral window onto the world. It is a space that has been meticulously engineered to hold your attention by triggering your strongest emotions, often insecurity, outrage, and envy. Each time you scroll, you are allowing hundreds of carefully crafted seeds to be planted in your mind. Images of perfect bodies, luxurious vacations, flawless families, and other people's career victories. Interspersed with this are headlines designed to make you angry or fearful. You wouldn't consciously choose to invite 1,000 strangers into your home to shout their anxieties and highlight your shortcomings, yet many of us do exactly that digitally, for hours every day. So, what is the work of the architect here? It is to become a mindful gatekeeper. This isn't about becoming a minimalist monk overnight. It's about making small, intentional choices. Start with a 5-minute tidy before you leave your office for the day. Create one clear surface. Notice how it makes you feel. Practice an information diet. Choose one day a week to avoid the news, or consciously decide not to engage when a coworker starts gossiping. And most importantly, curate your digital space. Unfollow accounts that consistently make you feel less than. Follow those that inspire you, teach you something, or simply make you laugh. Protecting your inner peace isn't just about wrestling with your thoughts. It's about creating an environment where peaceful, productive thoughts are more likely to grow in the first place. Tending to your environment is not a chore you do in addition to your inner work. It is an essential, inseparable part of it. You are the guardian at the gate of your own mind. And deciding what you allow to enter is one of the most powerful acts of self-respect you can practice. 6. The energy gauge. You are likely exhausted, not broken. We've done so much essential work. We are observing our thoughts, accepting reality, editing our stories, and curating our environments. We are building a truly resilient inner structure. But even the most brilliant architect cannot work effectively if their tools are dull and their own body is running on empty. And this brings us to a simple, profound, and often completely ignored truth. Sometimes, your negative thinking is not a sign of a deep psychological flaw. It is a sign that you are just profoundly tired. In our culture, especially for those of us who are navigating careers, parenthood, and the myriad responsibilities of adult life, exhaustion is often worn as a badge of honor. We treat our energy like an infinite resource, something to be pushed through and overcome. We tell ourselves we're just in a bad mood or being too sensitive. We try to use mindset hacks and willpower to fight a battle that is, at its core, biological. But the Stoics, who were masters of discipline, also understood the importance of managing one's vital energy. They knew that a depleted mind cannot be a rational one. Let's be honest with ourselves. When was the last time you felt truly, deeply rested? Not just less tired, but genuinely restored. For many of us, the answer is unsettling. We wake up already tired, force ourselves through the day on caffeine and adrenaline, and collapse at night, only to have our minds race, preventing us from getting the very rest we need. When you are in this state of chronic depletion, physically, mentally, and emotionally, your entire perception of the world changes. Your mind's negativity bias, a natural human trait, gets turned up to maximum volume. When you're exhausted, a neutral comment from your partner sounds like a sharp criticism. A small setback at work feels like a career-ending catastrophe. Your patience wears thin. Your ability to solve problems plummets. Your inner critic, that storyteller we worked on editing, suddenly has a megaphone and a captive audience. The reason is physiological. Modern science confirms what our bodies have always known. Research, including studies in journals like Occupational and Environmental Medicine, has shown that chronic overwork and the resulting exhaustion can actually alter the physical structure of the brain, particularly weakening the prefrontal cortex, the very part of our brain we need for rational thinking, emotional regulation, and willpower. In other words, your exhaustion is not a moral failing or a weakness of character. It is a neurological state. You are trying to use the most advanced, thoughtful part of your brain, but its power supply has been cut. You're trying to run complex software on a dead battery. The flood of negative thoughts you experience when you're burned out isn't a sign that you are broken, it's a diagnostic signal from your nervous system. It's the check engine light on your dashboard, and it's begging you to pull over and refuel. So, how do we refuel? We must redefine what rest truly means. It is not just about the number of hours you sleep. It is about actively doing things that replenish your specific energy stores. This can take many forms. It might be physical rest, like taking a 20-minute nap on a Saturday afternoon without guilt. It might be mental rest, which could mean turning off all screens and listening to instrumental music, or simply sitting in a quiet room and letting your mind wander without a goal. It might be emotional rest, which means giving yourself permission to say no to a social event you don't have the energy for, or spending time with a friend who doesn't require you to be on. The most powerful act for an architect of the mind is not always to build, but to know when to put the tools down and recover. Your task here is not to overhaul your entire life tomorrow. It is to identify one small, achievable act of restoration and treat it with the same seriousness as a business meeting. Schedule it in your calendar. A 15-minute walk outside, alone, without your phone. A lunch break where you actually leave your desk. Reading a novel for 20 minutes before bed instead of scrolling. Stop treating exhaustion as a weakness to be conquered. Start treating it as a signal to be honored. You are a human being, not a machine. Your energy is your most precious resource, because without it, all the other work we've discussed becomes 100 times harder. You cannot pour from an empty cup. Honoring your need for rest is not selfish. It is the most fundamental act of stewardship you can perform for your mind, your work, and the people you love. You are not broken. You may just be in desperate need of a break. 7. The upward spiral. Gratitude is an active rewiring tool. We have journeyed far. We've become the calm observers of our minds, we've made peace with reality, we've learned to pause, to edit our stories, to curate our environments, and most importantly, to honor our own energy. We have cleared the ground. We have weeded the garden. We have rested the gardener. Now, the final question remains, what do we choose to plant? This brings us to our final and most proactive principle. Gratitude is not a passive feeling, it is an active tool for rewiring the brain. Now, I know that for some, the phrase, practice gratitude, can sound like a flimsy, almost insulting platitude, especially when you are in the midst of genuine hardship. When the bills are piling up, a relationship is struggling, or your health is failing, the idea of being grateful can feel hollow. It's easy to think, what on earth do I have to be grateful for right now? That is a valid, honest response. And it's why we must redefine what this practice is really about. True gratitude is not about ignoring the pain. It is not about putting on a fake smile and pretending everything is wonderful. It is about actively and intentionally shifting your attentional spotlight. Your brain has a built-in negativity bias. It is naturally skilled at scanning for threats, problems, and what's missing. This was a useful survival tool on the ancient savannah, but in modern life, it often just traps us in a cycle of anxiety and dissatisfaction. Practicing gratitude is the conscious, deliberate act of counteracting this bias. It is a workout for your brain, training it to also scan for what is good, what is present, and what is working. Let's go back to our architect, Michael, who lost his career-defining project. His mind is naturally filled with everything he has lost, the status, the income, the sense of purpose. He feels poor in spirit. Gratitude, for him, isn't about pretending he's happy the project was cancelled. It's about finding solid ground to stand on amidst the rubble. He might start with the incredibly simple, undeniable truths. I am grateful for the breath in my lungs. I am grateful for the cup of coffee I'm drinking this morning. I am grateful for my health, which allows me to search for new opportunities. I am grateful for the one friend who called yesterday just to check in. Do you see what happens here? These small anchors of gratitude don't magically solve his career problem. But they do stop him from being completely swept away by the tide of despair. They remind his brain that even in loss, there is still presence. Even in darkness, there is still light. Each one of these thoughts is an act of defiance against the narrative of total loss. And like every other principle we've discussed, this has a powerful neurological basis. When you genuinely focus on a feeling of gratitude, your brain releases dopamine and serotonin, the key neurotransmitters responsible for feelings of pleasure, contentment, and well-being. It is a direct chemical intervention. Every time you practice gratitude, you are giving your brain a small, natural dose of its own antidepressant. You are actively strengthening the neural pathways that lead to peace and weakening the pathways that lead to rumination and negativity. This is why we call it the upward spiral. A negative thought leads to a negative feeling, which fuels another negative thought. But a grateful thought leads to a positive feeling, which makes it easier to find the next grateful thought. So here is your final tool, your proactive practice as the architect of your mind. Every night before you go to sleep, write down 3 specific things you are grateful for from that day. They don't have to be monumental. In fact, the smaller and more specific, the better. Not just, I'm grateful for my family, but, I'm grateful for the way my daughter laughed at my bad joke. Not just, I'm grateful for my home, but, I'm grateful for the feeling of my warm bed after a long day. The taste of my lunch. A beautiful song I heard on the radio. The 10 minutes of silence I had in the car. This simple, consistent practice, over time, does something remarkable. It retrains your brain. You will start to unconsciously scan your day for positive things, looking for material for your list. You are transforming your mind from a passive receptacle for problems into an active seeker of goodness. This is the final touch in our design. Gratitude is how you furnish the rooms of your inner world. It's how you paint the walls with light and warmth. It is what transforms the structure you've built from a cold, functional shelter into a vibrant, joyful home. It is the master tool that allows you to not just survive your inner world, but to truly thrive within it. And so, we arrive at the end of our blueprint. Let's take a step back and look at the beautiful, resilient structure we have designed together. Notice how each principle flows logically into the next, creating a complete system for inner strength. It all begins with the foundational realization that you are the silent watcher, not the storm of your thoughts. From that calm space of awareness, you gain the strength to stop arguing with reality and accept what is. This acceptance gives you the clarity to treat your first, powerful emotions not as commands, but as data, creating a sacred pause where wisdom can emerge. In that pause, you take up the editor's pen and consciously rewrite the painful narratives your mind creates, separating fact from fiction. But you know that this inner work is supported by your outer world, so you become the guardian of your environment, curating what you allow into your physical, social, and digital spaces. You learn to honor your own energy, recognizing that rest is not a weakness but a neurological necessity. And finally, with a clear space and a rested mind, you proactively build an upward spiral by using gratitude as your master tool, rewiring your brain for peace and contentment. This is not a collection of scattered tips. This is a framework. An operating system. It is the architect's plan for a mind built not just to withstand the storms of life, but to find meaning and strength within them. If this framework resonates with you, and you're serious about this journey of inner construction, then I invite you to subscribe and join a community of thinkers who are committed to building better minds. We are all architects here, learning from each other. And for your first act of conscious design, share in the comments which of these 7 principles you will start building with first. There is no right or wrong answer, there is only your next step. Remember, your mind is not your enemy. It is your most powerful asset. Start building.